Hey there, this is Animated Candice,
And Kevin.
and we're going to be talking about language and the media.
media.
The media, understood as the set of means of mass communication as other press, radio, and television broadcasting, have recently become a very influential phenomenon in most cultures. As they have taken the role of main mediators of the world, they hold a certain power over people's perception of it. Joanna Thornborough, professor of English and linguistics, says that for any given culture, the media have the power of deciding the significance of things that happen in the world, and that the language they decide to use to describe these events tends to provide the dominant ways available for the rest of us to talk about those groups and events. But how can they shape people's thoughts on different subjects? Joanna talks about a wide range of operations any media source can carry out, which would result, to a great extent, in manipulation of the material. This includes selecting what is news, who gets into the papers and onto television and the radio, as well as the way those stories get told, and the frameworks in which people get to appear and talk. Of course, this means the media also plays a role in everyday politics. This ranges from favoring a political party over another one to shaping or reproducing an ideological model.
Following Joanna's advice on media analysis to think of each medium as a complex institution functioning independently from the rest of the media, we have chosen to treat a specific medium as our subject for analysis, El Canciller. El Canciller is a media company in Buenos Aires that describes itself as the leading site viralizing news on social media. Considering the kind of posts that are most prone to go viral on social media, that is, fake news, link baiting, gossip, bold and pertinent language, etc., this description alone might be enough to foreshadow the kind of reports we may encounter on this site. And still, we'll analyze some of them. First of all, let's have a look at this X post about who, back in the day, was the president of Argentina. This article, and especially the picture chosen for it, is key to understanding the political views this medium aims to share and the side of the story they seek to publish. The political figure being discussed here is presented proudly as he undermines critics made against him. And, since we're at it, we may highlight the fact that he's using the three-part statement to do so with a bigger influence. The article alone does not seem so much like news, and, in fact, there is no link attached to the post, which means there is no official publication made on the subject. In this case, it seems that, even though there was nothing to be said, it was a good opportunity to shape the reader's mind on the discussion, or the president himself. This observation became more relevant this year, as recently Alberto Fernandez has started a frenetic event all around the country, as he's being investigated following claims related to gender-based violence against his ex-wife. However, when looking at the overall coverage of the scandal, one can barely find any done by this media, except when it comes to evidence that could somehow guide the public view in favor of the former president. This article is one of the few covered by El Canciller talking about the accusations made against Alberto Fernandez. Whereas the whole news service seems to be dodging the topic, this one tackled it straight on, only to undermine the victim's claims. This instance shows us more of the aspects discussed by Joanna Thornborough: how the media decides, first, who gets to be new, secondly, what effectively will be news, and third, how said news will be delivered. Who got to be news here? A witness discrediting the victim's accusations against the former president. What did effectively make it to the news? This declaration, which favored Alberto Fernandez over a dozen of proof against him. Who were the news delivered here? They were delivered undermining a potential victim of violence for the sake of a political figure's image. The latter aspect is not rare to find in any media, as Thornborough explained herself. However, when it comes to political stances, El Canciller seems to be perpetuating a clear set of ideas in many different ideological areas. One that stands out and seems to be worth mentioning is the field of foreigners living in Argentina. We may observe its views in articles such as this one.
In this article, the medium employs the use of the mock term Uruguayo to signal that this particular suspect of a crime is not Argentinian, unlike, possibly, the other three, whose nationality does not seem to have been worth mentioning. Thornborough also explains the ways in which linguistic representation can change the view of the public, which might just be what El Canciller has been trying to do. This article finds it convenient to underline the nationality of the accused man several times throughout the development of the piece, but that of the others remains a mystery, leaving the reader only with the idea that a Uruguayan man was involved. This could be argued to be an attempt to clean the country's reputation of the crime, highlighting the role of the outsiders rather than the natives. This simple highlighting of a term, along with the omission of another, can potentially support the negative perspective evident in Argentina against foreigners from neighboring countries. Instead of simply omitting the use of such a term in order to avoid a potentially xenophobic reaction from the public deriving from negative representation as explained by Thornborough, the medium is seen supporting and reproducing discrimination discourse against a nationality by placing the responsibility of a crime onto them and obscuring native co-participation. But hold on a minute! Apart from the emphasis on the suspect's nationality, this article may not necessarily be biased. The way in which the information is handled may simply mean that El Canciller does not take morality lightly. However, there are other pieces of writing in which the medium seems not so concerned with morality.
Looking at this article immediately makes one question if this was actually published by the same medium, as it heavily contrasts with the previous one. The article talking about El Uruguayo heavily relied on negative linguistic representation to set the man being investigated apart from Argentinian people. Meanwhile, this article about a well-known Argentinian musician accused of threatening and kidnapping someone only highlights positive characteristics about him. He's presented with positive terms such as the young musician and highlighting his wishes to start studying, while the accusations made against him are only briefly discussed. Moreover, the article puts special emphasis on the innocence of the musician rather than keeping a neutral stance. We can also mention the lack of coverage on the prosecutor's side, something apparently common to this institution, which also highlights the side of the story they want to share. And another aspect about this use of discourse that might catch your attention is the need for describing the musician as young, when his age has nothing to do with the crime he's been accused of. It is intriguing. It feels as if his age plays a role in his favor, with him being young, meaning that he would be allowed to make such mistakes. And as he is young, he's got his whole life ahead of him, and thus he should not be given such a strong sentence that would deprive him of his freedom.
It looks like, for El Canciller, age is an important factor in describing and judging people, but it does not always carry a positive connotation. In this following article, age does not seem to be playing in favor of this woman from Liniers. Quite oppositely, her age, which again does not seem to be relevant enough to appear in the headlines, seems to somehow be playing a role against her. Another thing one can also find in this piece is the reproduction of common sense discourses as discussed by Thornborough in the use of the term viuda negra. For once, the term as it's being used is sexist in discourse, since the origin of the generic name comes from the behavior of female spiders that eat the males after mating, but this use is, as described by Shen Waring in Language and Gender, gender-specific. In fact, the article misuses it, for it is actually used to describe female serial killers who target their husbands, but not males who target their wives. In this case, as well as in many others where this label is used in the same way, the woman detained only stole from her victim after putting them to sleep, but the term is used anyways, probably because it is catchier and brings out a bigger reaction from the audience. What it also brings is a higher negative perspective about the woman who the public will immediately perceive through sexist views, as the first thought in a reader's minds when reading Viuda Negra is that of a woman having sex with a man to steal from him or kill him, while in this case there was no sexual intercourse involved and the targeted victim is not even a male. This misuse continues to be reproduced by the media, making it more and more popular in common discourse. It is this sort of reproduction that favors the creation of negative common sense discourses which tend to undermine and degrade certain minorities such as women, people of specific ethnic origins, and elderly people.
Having reviewed and analyzed just a small portion of the news shared by this medium, we feel it necessary to acknowledge a few key points. For once, we reaffirm our statement. seeing El Canciller as a perfect example of how the media can shape their use of discourse to share a certain point of view. These perspectives can range from political stances and use of linguistic representations looking to favor a particular group of people, to the whole opposite, as they can also favor the reproduction of negative common sense discourses and misconceptions that lead to misogynistic, xenophobic, and overall undermining ideas. It is daunting to realize the amount of power the media has in how we interpret the world around us. However, Joanna Thornborough believes that this power is far from limitless. In her own words, the relationship is not a straightforward one. The public can also choose not to buy, listen, or watch. They can switch off, challenge allegiances, and in some cases, challenge the version of events. We, as the audience, also have the power to share or not to share what the media wants to publish.
Created using Powtoon.